All right, Charles Moscowitz here. Thanks for joining me, everyone. Welcome to the program. My guest is Doug Giles. He's the co founder and co host of the Warriors and Wildmen podcast and a man behind ClashNet Daily. Doug, you're the author of Call Jesus Radioactive. Thanks for joining me, Doug.
Actually, it's If Masculinity is Toxic, Chuck, Call Jesus Radioactive. How you doing, big dog?
I'm good. You know, the way Jesus has been portrayed lately, maybe by liberals, is this kind of all about love, which of course he is, but in a context almost like the teenage crush kind of love, as opposed to love your neighbor as yourself, which is that you can despise and fear your neighbor, but you quote love your neighbor because it means that you're respecting his rights means that your rights are respected. But it doesn't literally mean to love your neighbor. That's what I understand. And also this kind of sanitized image where they strip away any of the moral and ethical precepts of the Bible or any of the rights and wrongs. It's all like kind of a feel good, friendly, kind of a gauzy image. What say you?
Yeah, it's kind of a Donny Osmond, Marie Osmond, puppy love type Jesus. And he's a gelded God. We've effectively neutered the 30-year-old rebel from Galilee. And like you said, when he would call people to love one another, that doesn't mean tolerate evil. It doesn't mean that you don't rebuke people or reprove them for stupid ideas or stupid behavior, because Christ did that. In my book, I go through the entire book of Matthew, and I'm not adding to it. I'm not taking away from it. All I am is just looking from a prima facie standpoint how Christ operated when he was on this third rock from the sun 2,000 years ago. And what I concluded, Chuck, my walk away is that this is not some nicety nice kind of Woodstock hippie Garrison Keillor type cat that just walked around spitting out more aphorisms than Joel Osteen on a Mountain Dew bender. This guy was a heat-seeking missile. If you were a bad politician or if you were a lying, oppressive priest, then OMG, buddy, he's going to get up in your grill and he has no problem. I think actually, Chuck, when I was researching it, because it's not the first time that I've read the scripture. It's not the first time I've done a deep dive into the book of Matthew, but I really paid particular attention from an artistic standpoint, from an emotive aspect to the stringency of the text. I think he enjoyed pissing people off. I think he enjoyed lighting up all the wrong characters. And like I said, if you were spewing lies, hype, and spin, especially those lies that were separating you from a true relationship with God and oppressing you under a Roman system or a corrupt ecclesiastical system, man, he would light your hair on fire, and he would pronounce invectives against you. In particular, Matthew 23, when he pronounced the 8 woes on the Pharisees, those are curses, man. Those aren't like, well, try this, or it's not a suggestion. And those are curses, anathemas, what do you call it? Imprecations against them for being implacable liars and, shutting the kingdom of heaven off from people who are trying to get in through their religious traditions, their oppressive rules and regulations. And Christ crushed them, just absolutely crushed them like a narc at a biker party.
Yeah, I mean, he was in the great tradition of the prophets. He came and he didn't mince words. He spoke bluntly to evil, to overpowering types, to falsehoods, and he didn't mince words. I mean, you're absolutely right. I mean, he just would whack them over the head with truth, really, and
Yeah, and
that's what's been taken away.
no, I mean, again, you look at most pastors, they're just telling little stories, Chuck, to help Chuck and Doug cope and get through life. Jesus was throwing hand grenades.
Mm. Yeah,
That's what he did. And
and
people don't get it because they've seen the Jesus movies. They've heard, their limp pastor, describe Jesus again as this gelded little G type God. And they painted him as this nice Jared Leto character with Courtney Cox's wig on. And so when we talk about him, or and this is, again, I challenge your listeners and your viewers, get my book, or if you don't want to get my book and my take, just open the book of Matthew and flip and read it, because you're not going to see, again, this guy traipsing about in a taupe peignoir wearing Birkenstocks. This guy came to wreck the powers of darkness. He came to lambaste anybody who was siding with El Diablo, and he came to revolutionize the planet with the true path, the real path to the Father. And anything that got in his way, I'm telling you, he would bulldoze it, just absolutely bulldoze it. And you bring up, when you said that he was in the tradition of the prophets, one of the interesting things in Matthew 16, when Jesus is talking with his disciples, talking with his boys, and he said, who do people say that I am? And, they started chiming in. Some people are saying that you're Jeremiah. Some people are saying that you're Elijah. And then I can't remember if it was Peter or John said, and other people said that you're one of the prophets. And I'm like, whoa, like anybody who has any kind of knowledge about how the Old Testament or the Hebrew prophets rolled, they they know that these guys weren't a bunch of candy asses. These guys were sons of thunder. When they showed up, oh my God, everybody run, because they were dealing with serious issues to wayward Israel, and they didn't mince words. And you got the tradition of Isaiah, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and then all the minor prophets, Amos and Haggai and Micah, and on and on and on. That's some tough language. And then the people were saying, I really don't know what this Jesus is all about, but boy, I'm telling you right now, he got the baton from the Hebrew prophets, because he's speaking and acting just like them.
Yeah, I mean, the kind of speech we're not allowed to have today. In fact, if you and I had that too explicit a speech, I'd lose my YouTube channel today.
Hey, I lost my Facebook page with 2 million followers and a reach of 10 to 20 million people a week.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all controlled by the El Diabloers. Jesus, perhaps the most significant thing, there's so much he did, but at the end of his life, when he stood up to Pontius Pilate and Pilate said, who do you answer to? And Jesus said, I don't answer to you. I answer to a higher authority. And of course, he was crucified within the hour after doing that. And what he did was he stood up to the mighty power of the secular Roman Empire, and did so as one man standing there alone and standing up to that power. And I think that's inspired everyone ever since, regardless of, whether you're Christian. I mean, just the idea of standing up alone to the enormous behemoth, the power of the state, the power of, the forces of wrong. And to do so, hey, I don't answer to you. I answer to a higher authority. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then you look at his disciples after the upper room experience, and the gospel starts going forth, and Peter and John in particular, they see this 40-year-old cripple who's been crippled for 40 years, and he's accustomed to begging at the temple, and he asks Peter and John for some cash, and Peter says, silver and gold I don't have, but what I have I give you. In the name of Jesus, rise up and walk. And boom, that guy all of a sudden gets healed, starts jumping and leaping and praising God. And then all of a sudden the religious hoity-toities and the state, they start getting real nervous, because this notable miracle happened, and it was being attributed to the resurrected Christ. Now, in our context, Chuck, we're like, that's not a big deal. That's a Sunday school story. Well, as you point out, Rome ruled the roost, and Caesar was not just a leader, he was their god. He had his face on coins, and on the coin it said King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so Peter and the disciple, they're like, no, Jesus is king. We have another king, we have another kingdom, we have another Lord. And when the state encroaches and tries to mitigate what Christ has called us to, then guess what? We turn into James Dean and become rebels with the cause. And they tried to shut Peter and John down. They said, don't speak anymore, threw them in jail, and don't speak anymore about this Christ. And Peter's like, you know what? Blow it out your backside. We're beholden to God. We're not beholden to the government. we're not trying to ruin everybody's life, but when you try to again force, the laws of Caesar, and it conflicts with what we've been commissioned to do in our conscience, then guess what? We're not going to wear a mask. We're not going to shut our church down. We're not going to close our gym. Hello. And I look at pastors today, buddy, and I'm like, you guys are shameful. It's like, well, the governor told us, Chuck, or the mayor told us, little jackbooted mayor, who is our employee. They're our maids, folks. They told us that we couldn't meet in church, or if we did, only 10 people should show up. We can't touch each other. I thought Jesus said, lay hands on the sick. I thought Paul said 4 times in his epistles to greet each other with a holy kiss. Now, was Jesus so blind and not really omniscient that he didn't see, Chuck, a bad cold coming in 2020, or the Wuhan Weezer, the China virus? And so he blindly and stupidly said that we're supposed to lay hands on the sick. We're supposed to assemble together every week to worship and to hear the word of God. And now all of a sudden that's been put on the back burner because some blasted, stupid little governor or mayor says so. I'm sorry, I'm going to obey God instead of you. So that's how I roll, bro.
What the hell happened to Supreme Court Judge John Roberts? I mean, he
Dude, I
said
don't
that
know, man. Everybody's like, yay, we've got a conservative judge. It's like he's done any and everything than vote constitutionally,
well, the
It's
particular
always with
bad
the
one. I mean,
left.
we all expect that from the liberals in the Supreme Court. Nobody expects them to do, otherwise. But for him to say that a church in Nevada can't congregate, I mean, I thought that Ted Cruz had the best answer to that. He goes, "Good, we'll set up craps tables." We'll set
Right.
up roulettes because the casinos are all gathering. I mean, but somehow churches can't. And I
Well,
can't.
what the pastors need to do is say, we're not calling it church anymore. We're calling it riots, and we're calling it protests. And
Yes,
maybe if they
peaceful
went and broke,
protests.
yeah, maybe if they went and broke some stuff like the looters did, they'll have all the governor of, or all the law enforcers get on their side and say, "Gosh, you guys are great." Because apparently, if you love looting, if you love, now, as we got on record, the Black Lives Matter saying that all of their looting and knocking over Gucci and Chanel and Armani stores in New York is part of reparations,
Oh
and
yeah,
this
sure.
is just the way it is. Then if if the Christians did that, then maybe they could get together. But
Maybe they let
here's
him come out of the house and leave the house arrest.
yeah,
Um,
here's one
yeah.
thing I want your viewers and listeners to understand, that if you're a Christian, and I'm not talking you have to be a radical, on fire, tongue talking Pentecostal type Christian, you just believe in God and Jesus, then guess what? The left hates your guts and they love Marxist radicals. So going into 2020, if you like to see cities burned and your religious rights evaporate like a pack of smokes at an AA meeting, vote for Joe Biden and Kamala Harris.
Would Jesus vote for Trump?
Well, I think, this him being King of Kings and Lord of Lords, I don't think he'd vote for any human. However, because he knows what's inside of us. However, from a governance standpoint, Trump's policies, from the first time he sat behind that desk where Bill boinked Monica, has been very, very friendly to the biblical worldview and to our Constitution, Bill of Rights, and Declaration of Independence. So I'd say again, just the way that he's governed, I think Christians would have to be full on baptized in a spirit of stupidity to ignore his actual policies and what he's done, even through the COVID crisis and this Black Lives Matter mayhem and all the Antifa idiots. I think he's an excellent job. Is he perfect? No. You know who the only perfect person was? Jesus. You know what they did to him? Murdered him. So I think he's done to me, again, here's a big if, Chuck, if the believer, this is a big if they take the implementation of the biblical worldview, which yielded up this grand experiment in self-governance, there's been no place like it on this planet, and they enjoy America in its prosperity and the benevolence that we've put forth. 90%, 97% of the world's benevolence comes, boom, from the United States. And if they take that seriously and if they appreciate it with all of our faults and foibles, then there's no way in Hades that they can consider Joe Biden. Trump is the person. And here's another thing. Sorry, bro, I'm in a
No,
rant.
please go right ahead.
Here's another thing that I think is so stupid when Christians say this, and so idiotic and so blind and so anti-biblical. They're like, well, Trump, he's been married 3 times, and Trump, he could have had sex, with Stormy Daniels or Karen McDougal, Playboy model and stuff. And Trump, he puts out mean tweets. And I'm like, and first of all, his liaisons, what would you do if you were a billionaire and you weren't tethered to reality by the Holy Ghost? I think you'd be sowing some wild oats. I know I would be. I'm not approving of it, but can you imagine you're a single billionaire, you're in New York, you got chicks, throwing themselves at you. Everybody's like, well, I'd never do it. It's like, yeah, because you got a crap car, you got a crap job, and no girl wants to lay you. That's why you think you'd never do it. But I guarantee if you had a team of Swedish 6-foot supermodels coming at you because you were worth $1 billion, yeah, we might find you with your pants down at some juncture. And here's another thing: the tweets.
Given all of that, he was fairly restrained, actually.
Yeah, I think gosh, I mean, look at David Lee Roth. I mean,
there you go.
He's so Gene Simmons, which you kind of look like Gene Simmons, man. You got to put some Kiss makeup on you and come out and do the show one time. Another thing they say about Trump was, he does mean tweets and he calls people names, and I'm like, oh, and that's not Christian? No, Jesus wouldn't do that. It's like, well, he called a woman a dog. He said, I don't throw what's holy to dogs. And you know what he called her a dog, a Syrophoenician woman. I mean, she's a migrant and she's got a kid that's acting like Miley virus, and she wants Jesus to cast the devil out of her. And he said, I don't give what's holy to dogs. I was only sent to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And you know what she did? She didn't take up a hashtag campaign. She didn't let's get the Father and the Holy Spirit to fire Jesus, or at least take him through some Oprah-approved re-education camp so that he won't come back with this kind of incendiary language against a poor, suffering immigrant woman. She didn't do that. What she did say, she goes, yeah, but the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. And Jesus goes, boom, lady, you're in the fold, and your crazy daughter, well, she's healed now. And Jesus was a big name caller. Look what he called the Pharisees: snakes, broods of vipers, whitewashed sepulchres. I mean, just on and on and on. He called Herod a fox, and he wasn't saying he was handsome. He was saying he was an effeminate, little sly, sneaky, beady-eyed carrion eater.
Yeah, great. I mean, it's we should hopefully wake up Christians in that sense. I mean, they're the people that put Trump in the White House, and we all want religious freedom. It's kind of a no-brainer. I don't get why anyone
I mean, you look
would say otherwise.
and you look at the draconian COVID edicts, which they're not laws. Dear listener, dear viewer, you have to vote on stuff for it to become law. You just don't have a governor said, you must do this. Like, really? Well, you must kiss my backside. Well, it's for your safety. Hey, I'll take care of my health and my safety. What you need to protect, dear governor, Mr. or Miss Mayor, is this thing called my rights. That's all you have to do. You protect my rights, and I'll take care of my health and my safety. And yeah, I think I'm smart enough to circumnavigate these tricky streams when a bad cold comes through. We've done it now I've done it now for 57 years. Thank you very much.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, nobody wants to catch a bad cold. You could do appropriate measures and not let this be an excuse for power-hungry governors and mayors to basically put us all under a state of house arrest and have everybody shaking in their boots.
Yeah, again, in regards to the Christian, that's dancing around the maypole thinking that government is going to, be pleasant to us in regards to our religious liberties. You're about to have your rose-colored glasses pulled off your head and get stomped by jackbooted government officials
It's already
because they don't
happening.
like Christianity. They don't like Christianity, man. That they're
No, it
they
already
that
happened just in the news the other night. The jackbooted, ninja dressed cops showed up at a church, and I think it was in Santa Barbara, somewhere near there, and were dragging people out, and people were
yeah,
screaming. It was just, it's
right,
happening. You know, we think
yeah.
these things won't happen, but who would have thought 5 months ago that we, businesses would be shut down, people would be essentially, in quarantine in their own homes. It would have been unthinkable. So, these things can happen. They have happened, and they will happen. Do you think Christians are going to realize this and wake up and come out and vote and take back control of the government like the early Christians did to the Roman Empire? I mean, they took Christianity spread through the Roman Empire like wildfire, even with the oppression and with the lions' dens. And, people were like, hey, we answer to a higher authority. And then one day, Caesar, in the form of Constantine, woke up and realized, hey, the whole empire is Christian. And he threw in the towel. I mean, we have to see that today.
Yeah, not only that, but our epic founders and framers, who the left has been for the last 4 decades, zealously trying to underwrite, their brilliance and what they did, just because. And I'm not making light of slavery, but yeah, were they perfect? No. And by the way, Christians assisted, like William Wilberforce and Charles Grandison Finney, Abraham Lincoln, with the abolition of the slave trade. So that's by
Exactly.
the
I
way.
mean, it was a
And
Christian
most,
movement.
yeah, and so, but you look at the founders and the framers. They were serious Christians, and if they weren't serious Christians, they took the biblical worldview serious, like Thomas Jefferson and Thomas Paine. And they what these guys did, they said, you know what, we're kind of sick of King George's oppression. We're kind of sick of just a tiny little tax that they put on the tea up there in Massachusetts, where you hail from. And
Yeah.
they said, and then they said, we want to get your guns. We want to get your Kentucky muskets. And they said, you know what? People in hell want ice water. We're going to start a revolution. And they didn't put up with it. Then they had a Black Robe Regiment, which was made up of pastors. But if you look at pastors today, oh my God, they're like the pink robed regiment. They're completely emasculated. They're like, can we go to church yet? Can we get together? Who the hell are you asking? Christ has already told you to gather together. You have the right to assemble according to our Constitution and Bill of Rights. And now all of a sudden you're just scared. I might go to jail. Yeah, you might go to jail. Have you not read the flippin' Bible? People go to jail for righteous reasons. You have to pay a price. Jesus said this, which is not quoted very much in little churches. And but your viewers should put this on a magnet, put it on their refrigerator. Jesus said, if they hate me, guess what? They're going to hate you. And if they persecuted me, you're not going to have a softer bed. That's the row you get to hoe, and they're gonna persecute you also. And pastors love to be loved instead of love to be heralds of the greatest story ever told. And here's a warning for the pastor, okay?
Mm-hmm.
You ain't going to stand before mommy. You're not going to have your wife next to you. You're not going to have your elder board or your deacon board explaining to God at the judgment seat why you were a wussy and you curled up in the fetal position and you obeyed governors and mayors instead of obeying him. So good luck with that. And I believe Jesus said in Matthew 10 and Mark 8 that if you deny me and my word in this perverted generation, guess who's going to deny whom at, at the judgment seat? I'll deny you. And I don't want to be on the receiving end of that pool cue, Chuck. If I was a pastor, not at all.
No, I mean, they're too busy, as are conservatives, trying to kiss up to the New York Times and the liberal media. They want to get their big fat face on television. They want to be loved. And yeah, they don't want to have to go through the pain of standing up to that and telling the truth. It's easy to kind of go along. I mean, that's why most people, I think, in this country are liberal and on the left, anyways. When you go to college, you don't want to buck that system. Your parents are spending 50 grand a year. You kind of you get along. You kind of sublimate. You put everything in. You forget it all, and you get with the system because that's the system that holds the power, the high ground.
Yeah, yeah,
What about
and that's the system, and that's a system that Jesus blew up
railed
with
against? Exactly, the corrupt
celestial being.
establishment, and
Right.
that's who killed him. Absolutely. Now,
Yeah.
as you point out, I mean, the abolitionist movement was a Christian movement. It was the first time in world history that slavery was abolished. It was all over the world at the time. The Revolutionary War was a Christian movement. The Civil Rights Movement was a Christian movement led by Christian ministers, Martin Luther King Jr. and all the rest. Can we have a Christian movement now to stand up to this rotten, atheistic, amoral establishment that seeks to turn the United States into a province of the world?
I think one of the like, if the Christians are going to revolt, I think first and foremost it should be because this affects people that aren't Christian, atheists, anti-theist, just people who enjoy this thing. Gosh, what was it called? Oh yeah, it's called liberty. I think the Christians ought to be at the forefront of the rebellion against big government, just for their liberties, to speak. We've got the thought police now telling us what to say and what not to say. And soon chunks of the scripture, especially Romans chapter 1, are going to become verboten. And so the ability to speak your mind, and again, that's for everybody, because the liberals want to shut speech down. They
Oh yeah.
want it filtered through their sieve of political correctness and hyper wokeness. So I think Christians, being at the forefront of freedom of speech, and then freedom to assemble, and anti big government. I mean, like Rand Paul type stuff. I think Christians ought to be on the forefront of that. But again, there's because again that affords a huge message to a gamut of people that still, again, believe in our Constitution, our bylaws, and Declaration of Independence. So it's not just church specific rebellion. It's just a rebellion of liberty with checks and balances, obviously, to what we do. And I think it'd be cool if Christians would do that, but no, Christians are going to Christian Zoom meetings on Facebook and talking about how bad life is and wondering when Jesus is going to rapture them out of this mess. So they're not planning on staying; they're planning on leaving. And if we're planning on staying, which I am, then you've got to fight for your right to party, as Twisted Sister said.
Yeah, I mean, one of the basic and most appealing aspects of President Trump is that he doesn't censor himself, and he's not censored. He goes directly to his people on Twitter, etc., and he speaks truth, and he does so bluntly. He doesn't mince words, and I think that's his appeal. Even though and it's what drives the establishment media nuts. I just saw Tucker Carlson report yesterday that all of the major networks, including his own, have gotten letters from the Democratic Party and from liberal sources saying that if they criticize the Democratic vice presidential nominee, whoever it is, and they did this before she was named, they would be accused of racism. They would be accused of having something against black people. They would
Right,
be, and all of that. In other words, it's an intimidation. It's an attempt to say critic, you can't speak up here. You can't. This person
right,
cannot be criticized based on merits because she's black.
right. I think she's actually Indian, right?
Yeah, I don't even. Who knows? But you
Well,
know.
she's got a better tan than you and I. We'll put it that way. No, and if you're
That's
if you're a black liberal woman, then you can't say anything. They could say, the sky is purple, and you're like, yeah, it's purple, and I guess it's purple, and 2 plus 2 doesn't equal 4, and you're like, oh, okay, all right, I'm a white guy and I'm a Christian, so I can't argue with that. Water runs uphill. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. Water, I saw one the other day, do the right up the hill. No, it's bull crap. And look, I'm not a racist, but if you say something that's stupid, that's wrong, that's a lie, then I feel it's my obligation, even though I'm a frail white man, to speak up against it. And I get that lead from Jesus Cristo, as we call him, down in deep South Texas.
yeah, you bet. So, Doug, let my listeners and viewers know where they can get your book, and talk a little bit, if you will, about your news website, your opinion website.
Yeah, so my main stomping grounds is douggiles.org. That's Doug Giles, Giles.org. And it's my neighborhood. And you can come traipse through my neighborhood. We've got our news portal link there to Clash Daily. 270 million page views, Chuck, in the last 7 years. Also, you can see my artwork. You got to see my artwork because I'm not just a rambling, crazy Jesus fanatic. Dougie likes to paint also, so killer artwork there. Lots of good Trump art too. That's hilarious. And we've got some cool projects going as well. I did a short film called Biblical Badasses, a raw look at Christianity and art, and that's on Amazon Prime. But it all can be found, the book included, at douggiles.org.
Excellent. All right, Doug. Listen, thanks for joining me as always. I appreciate it. Hope to talk to you soon.
Right on. Stay rowdy, Chuck.
All right, Doug. Thanks a lot.